Forget the fairy tales. Forget the knights, the castles, the chivalry. That world is a speck of glitter on a mountain of mud. We are going there, to the mud. The year is 1347. The place is a nameless strip of land in the English Midlands, part of the manor of Wolford. You are not a king. You are not a lord. You are Edric, a villain, a tied serf. You are owned, as surely as the stubborn ox in your pen, by the land and by the Lord of Wolford. Your name means wealthy ruler in the old tongue. The irony would make you weep if you had the spare energy for tears. Your day does not begin with an alarm. It begins in the pitch-black, suffocating silence of a one-room hut you share with your wife, Agnes, your 3 surviving children, your elderly mother, and the family pig. The floor is packed earth, strewn with rushes that haven't been changed in months. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, damp wool, sleeping bodies, and animal dung. There is no chimney. The smoke from the central hearth finds its way out through a hole in the thatched roof, stinging your eyes day and night. You wake because your bladder aches, because the baby is whimpering, because the cold has seeped into your bones, despite everyone sleeping together for warmth. You rise from a mattress of straw crawling with lice and fleas, constant, itching companions. You pull on the same woolen tunic and leggings you wore yesterday and every day last week. They are stiff with grease, sweat, and earth. You are already dressed for work. You sleep in your clothes. Here is your first brutal hook. You are already starving, and it's only dawn. Not starving to death, but starving as a permanent state of being. The hunger gap is what they call late winter and early spring, when last year's grain stores are dwindling to dust and the new crops are just seeds in the frozen ground. Your breakfast is a piece of coarse, dark bread made from rye and barley, so hard you must soak it in a thin, sour beer called small ale to chew it. The ale is for everyone, children included. It's safer than water from the village pond, which is also where the geese defecate. You feel a hollow gnawing in your belly that never truly goes away. This is your baseline. But wait, before you even step outside, let's settle the biggest question. What did you actually own? The answer will shatter any romantic vision. You likely owned the clothes on your back, a wooden bowl and spoon, a knife, maybe a stool. Your hut was built by your grandfather on land you do not own. Your strips of field in the great open farm were allotted to you by the Lord's steward. Even the ox you might plow with is shared between several families. Your freedom is a fiction. You owe the Lord 3 days of labor each week on his domain lands, his home farm, for free. When you harvest your own meager strips, you must use the Lord's mill to grind your grain and pay him a portion for the privilege. You cannot marry your daughter without his permission and paying a fee. You cannot leave the manor. You are a human tool, part of the land's inventory. Now you step outside into the pre-dawn gloom. The village is a cluster of perhaps 15 hovels along a single muddy track. The air is bitingly cold, smelling of wood smoke and frost. You are not alone. Other shadowy figures emerge, men and women alike, their breaths pluming in the air. There is little talk. Energy is too precious to waste on words. You collect your tools from a lean-to, a heavy wooden hoe, a sickle, perhaps a poorly balanced plowshare you'll drag with your neighbor's ox. But pause. Look at your body. You are not the strapping peasant of Hollywood. You are short, perhaps 5'3", stunted by a lifetime of nutritional deficiency. Your back is already hunched from labor. Your joints ache with what will later be called arthritis. Your teeth are worn down to nubs from the grit in your bread. You are 25 years old. You look 40. This is the physical price of your calm rural life. The walk to the fields takes you through the heart of the medieval world, the open field system. This is not a pretty patchwork of farms. It's a vast, unfenced expanse divided into long, thin strips. Your strips are not together. They are scattered, one here, a half-mile away, so that good and bad land are shared fairly. It creates a logistical nightmare. The land itself is exhausted, farmed for generations. Your yield is pathetic. For every 3 seeds you plant, you might get 4 back. Survival hangs on a razor's edge. The work is mind-numbingly, bone-crushingly repetitive. Today, if it's spring, you are breaking the hard earth with your hoe or guiding the ox-drawn plow. The plow is a crude thing, often just scratching the surface. You follow the line of your strip, turn, come back. For 10 hours. The mud sucks at your feet. Your hands blister and bleed. There are no gloves. And here is a mind-boggling agricultural secret, the 3-field system. This is the great innovation of your age. Instead of farming half the land and leaving half fallow, empty, each year, your village rotates. 1 field for winter wheat or rye, 1 for spring barley or oats, 1 left fallow to recover. It's a fragile dance with nature that slightly boosts the food supply. It's the difference between life and death for your village. You are not a dumb brute. You are part of a delicate, communal survival strategy. But just as you find a rhythm, the world reminds you of its hierarchy. The Lord's bailiff rides up on horseback, a superior figure on a superior animal. He's checking that you're not shirking your work on his domain lands. He barks an order. Tomorrow, you and your neighbors are to ditch the Lord's drainage canal instead of tending your own strips. Your heart sinks. Your own crops will suffer. You nod silently. Resistance is not rebellion, it is suicide. By midday, you are allowed a short rest. You gather with the other peasants at the edge of the field. The food is more bread, a sliver of hard cheese, an onion. You drink more small ale. The conversation is not about philosophy or politics. It is about the weather. Always the weather. Will it rain too much and rot the seed? Will it be too dry and bake the seedlings? You discuss the strange rash on Widow Martha's cow. You gossip about the miller, who everyone suspects cheats on the weight of flour. This is your news, your social media, your daily briefing. And now look at the edges of the field. See those patches of weeds? To you, they are not weeds. They are the pharmacy, the grocery store, the first aid kit. Your wife Agnes knows them all. Fat hen can be boiled like spinach. Nettles make a soup. Yarrow can staunch a bleeding wound. Meadowsweet can ease a fever. Your life is sustained as much by this common land, where you have the right to forage, graze a goose, collect firewood, as by your strips of grain. This right is your lifeblood, and the Lord is constantly trying to enclose these commons for his own sheep. Your daily survival is a quiet, endless legal war. The afternoon sun, if it appears, is a weak blessing. You return to your labor. But let's introduce a new character, the church. Its bell tolls from the stone building in the distance, marking the canonical hours. It demands not just your faith, but your time and your grain. You owe a tithe, 1/10 of your production, to the church. This is on top of what you owe the Lord. The church is the other great power in your life, offering salvation and social order in exchange for your last measure of barley. As dusk bleeds into the sky, you trudge home. Your body is a single, throbbing ache, but your work is not done. The homestead awaits. You might spend an hour mending a fence with rough-cut wood. Agnes has been working just as hard, but invisibly. She spent the day spinning wool into yarn on a drop spindle, watching the children, tending the vegetable patch, the croft behind your hut, brewing the ale, cooking a meager supper over the open fire. Supper is the main meal. It might be a pottage, a thick soup simmering all day in a cauldron over the fire. Into it goes everything. Barley, your few beans, leeks from the garden, maybe a scrap of salted pork fat if you are fortunate. It is flavorless, save for the salt you bought at great cost. You eat from a shared bowl, dipping your bread. There is no table. You sit on the floor. This is where a fascinating, dark comfort emerges, storytelling and superstition. As the fire flickers, casting monstrous shadows on the wattle and daub walls, your mother might tell a tale, not of knights, but of the green man, the spirit of the forest who must be appeased, of willow lisps that lead travelers to their doom in the marshes. You live in a world haunted by the supernatural. Every unexplained sound, a fox screeching, a tree groaning, is a potential demon or fairy. The line between this world and the next is tissue thin. Your faith in God coexists with a deep, pragmatic fear of older, darker things. This isn't ignorance, it's a framework for explaining a cruel and random universe. You sleep early, out of sheer exhaustion. The family piles together for warmth. The pig in the corner shuffles and snuffles. The fleas bite. You dream not of riches, but of a full harvest, of a day when your back doesn't hurt, of your children surviving the winter. But wait, we've only seen an ordinary day. Let's now pull back the curtain on the true engines of your terror and resilience. First, the calendar of fear. Your year is not marked by months, but by backbreaking festivals of labor. Haymaking in June is a frantic all-hands race against the weather. The harvest in August and September is the most important, desperate period of all. The Lord's harvest first, then your own, all under the threat of autumn storms. Every able body, even children, works from sunup until they cannot see. One hailstorm can mean famine. Second, the peasant diet paradox. You are starving, yet you might be slightly healthier than a rich lord in some ways. Your diet is primarily vegetarian: bread, pottage, ale. You rarely eat meat. This means you avoid the gout and digestive ailments of the meat-gorging aristocracy. But you lack protein and vitamins. Scurvy, rickets, and tooth loss are your constant companions. You are lean, tough, and chronically deficient. Third, the invisible army of death. You live with constant low-grade sickness, agues, dysentery from bad water, respiratory infections from the smoky hut. A simple cut can fester and kill. Child mortality is so high you do not name a child until it has survived its first year. Your average life expectancy, if you survive childhood, might stretch to 35 years. Old age is 50. Fourth, the secret social world. The manorial court is where your community governs itself. You and your peers will sit in judgment on petty crimes, a stolen chicken, a boundary dispute. The Lord Steward presides, but the judgments often reflect village custom. This is your shred of self-determination. It's also where gossip becomes law, where reputations are made and broken. Now imagine the catastrophe. The year is 1347. Rumors are arriving from the ports, carried by terrified merchants. A great pestilence is sweeping from the east. It reaches your village. It is the Black Death. The world you know ends in weeks. The disease does not care about lord or serf. People sicken with grotesque boils and die in agony within days. Whole families vanish. The priest dies. The lord flees to his isolated castle, but his servants bring it to him. The social order collapses. Fields lie fallow because there is no one to work them. The air smells not of mud, but of death and burning pitch. And here is the ultimate world-shattering payoff. The Black Death, this unimaginable horror, becomes your unlikely liberation. With half the population dead, laborers are suddenly scarce. You, Edric the villain, are now valuable. Lords are desperate. They begin to offer wages for work instead of demanding forced labor. They relax the old feudal bonds to keep people on the land. The price of your labor skyrockets. The rigid hierarchy for centuries begins to crack. You might, for the first time, dare to leave Wolford to a manor 10 miles away that offers better terms. You might demand payment in coin, not just in kind. The rigid hierarchy of centuries starts to tremble. The medieval peasant, the most forgotten figure in history, becomes the unlikely agent of the world's greatest economic and social revolution, the beginning of the end of feudalism. So, as you close your eyes in your smoky hut, aching and hungry, remember this: you are not just a brute enduring misery. You are a resilient node in a vast, fragile system. You are a repository of ancient agricultural wisdom. You are a soldier in a silent war for rights and commons.
And, though you will never know it, your grinding daily struggle and your catastrophic suffering will ultimately forge the modern world. Your calm is the calm of the grave and the seed. Your day is a battle fought with a hoe, a prayer, and a stubborn, unkillable hope that tomorrow the sun might be warmer and the bread, just once, might be enough.
But we must go deeper. We've seen the day, we've seen the cataclysm. Now let's walk through the ashes and the strange new dawn. The plague has passed over your village like a scythe. You, Edric, by some miracle of constitution or luck, have survived. Agnes has survived. 2 of your 3 children are gone. The silence in your hut is no longer peaceful, it is grief made audible. The communal rhythm of the village is shattered. Half the houses stand empty, their doors creaking in the wind. Here is the first shocking reality of the aftermath. The world is suddenly, eerily quiet. There are not enough people to create the old hum of life. The fields are a tangle of weeds and unharvested, rotting grain from the previous year. But within this silence lies your new, terrifying power. The Lord's bailiff returns, but his tone has changed. He is no longer barking, he is pleading. The domain fields must be ploughed, he says, almost apologetically. The Lord of Wolford will pay 2 pence a day. Your mind reels. 2 pence for work you used to do for free, and paid in coin, the shiny silver pennies you've only ever seen in the hands of merchants. This is wealth beyond your comprehension. But more than that, it is choice. Another lord from the next manor has sent word. He offers 3 pence a day, and will forgive any entry fee if you take up one of his empty villain tenements. This is the revolution. It's not fought with swords, but with negotiation. For the first time in your family's memory, you have leverage. The concept of a labor market is being born in the mud of these fields. You and your surviving neighbors gather in what's left of the tavern. The conversation is no longer about the weather. It is about wages, contracts, and freedom. John over at Sutton is getting his milling fee cut in half, one man says. I told the steward I wouldn't repair his barn roof unless he forgave my Harriet, says another, referring to the death tax that took a family's best beast when the father died. You feel a dangerous, thrilling new feeling, agency. But the old world fights back with a vengeance. The crown, terrified of this upheaval, passes the Statute of Labourers in 1351. It's a law that tries to freeze time. It decrees that wages must be capped at pre-plague levels and that peasants cannot travel to seek better work. The lords try to enforce it. The bailiff becomes stern again, waving the king's writ. This is the next great hook. Your quiet war just turned hot. The imposed law feels like a betrayal. The emotional payoff, you and your kind begin to resist, not just with silent foot-dragging, but with organized defiance. You hear whispers of laborers simply walking off the job, of villages collectively refusing to pay the old fines. The social contract, which was always based on brute force and tradition, is now being questioned out loud. Let's zoom in on Agnes's world in this new reality. Her life has been shattered by loss, but also transformed by scarcity. Her skills are now worth more. The cloth she weaves from your few sheep commands a higher price at the market. With fewer people, she might even take on a larger croft to manage. But the psychological landscape is darker. The church preaches that the plague was God's wrath for sin. She lives with a gnawing guilt. Why did she survive when her children did not? Her piety is now mixed with a deep, unanswerable anger. She might turn to more desperate folk magic, buying charms from a cunning woman to protect the remaining family, blending Christian prayer with older, earthier incantations. Now follow the seasons in this broken world. Year 1350, spring. You are ploughing, but you are doing it for a wage.
The feel of a silver penny in your palm is a strange, heavy magic. You buy a metal cooking pot to replace the cracked clay one. It feels like an unimaginable luxury. You taste meat, a rabbit you trapped, more often. Your diet improves slightly, and with it your strength. Your surviving son, now 10, works beside you. You realize he might not have to live your life. He could learn a trade in the growing towns where hands are desperately needed. Summer 1350, the haymaking. There are not enough of you. The Lord must bring in workers from a town, paying them even higher wages. You work alongside them, and they tell stories of the world outside the manor, of cities where a man can be free if he lives there for a year and a day. A new idea is planted in your mind, the town as a sanctuary. Autumn 1350, the harvest. This is the ultimate test of power. The Lord needs every single sheaf gathered, or his wealth rots on the stalk. You and the other village men meet secretly the night before. You agree to slow your pace unless a collective bonus is paid. It's a primitive strike. The steward, panicking about rain clouds on the horizon, agrees. You have just participated in the first collective bargaining in your family's history. You won. Winter 1350. The hunger is less sharp. You have a small cache of coins hidden in the hut. You attend the Christmas feast in the Lord's Hall, once a grim obligation, now a paid entertainment. You see the fear in the Lord's eyes. He needs you more than you need him. The old deference is gone, replaced with a tense transactional relationship. But this new world is not a paradise. It is fragile and violent. The old order strikes back. Lords, facing ruin from rising wages, try to force former serfs back into bondage. They use the courts, they use thugs, they use the church's sermons about knowing your place. A new kind of rogue appears on the roads, the outlawed laborer, a man who fled his manor and now lives in the forest, stealing to survive. He is both a warning and a dark folk hero. And then the final explosive payoff, the event that crystallizes this century of silent struggle into a firestorm, the peasants' revolt of 1381. You, Edric, are now an old man. Your back is ruined, but your mind is sharp with decades of silent calculation and resentment. The poll tax is the last straw, a brutal, unfair tax that hits the poor hardest. The spark ignites. You may not march to London yourself, but your son does. He comes back with wild-eyed stories of tens of thousands of peasants, armed with scythes and bows, led by a radical preacher named John Ball, who asks the question that has been simmering in your heart for decades. When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman? The rebels burn manorial records, the hated documents that list your debts and obligations. They execute the Lord Chancellor and the King's Treasurer. For a few terrifying weeks, the world is turned upside down. The king, a 14-year-old boy, meets them and makes promises of freedom and fair rents. It is the moment of peak peasant power. And then it is betrayed. The promises are broken. The revolt is crushed with horrific brutality. Its leaders are hanged, drawn, and quartered. The old terror returns. But here is the mind-boggling historical truth. They lost the battle, but they won the war. The revolt, though crushed, was a shockwave the aristocracy could never forget. It became too dangerous, too expensive to try and fully restore the old serfdom. The economic forces unleashed by the plague were irreversible. Wages remained high. Villeinage continued to wither away. Within a century, most peasants were effectively yeoman farmers, renting land for cash, their lives governed by contract, not custom. So when you finally close your eyes for the last time in your smoky hut, the taste of meat and ale a little more common on your tongue than it was in your youth, know this: your day was not just one of misery, it was a day in the long, slow, painful birth of the modern working world. You fought the silent war with a hoe, and though you never held a sword, you helped slay a giant. The feudal dragon died from 1,000 tiny cuts, and your blistered, calloused hands held the knife.